Hello again, this is Ben Hitchcock Cross talking to you today. We have a bit of a law nerd segment here. We are going to look at this controversy that happened under Milwaukee's new superintendent, Brenda Cassellius, when she was the superintendent of Boston Public Schools. And I can basically frame it as this. We're going to have a news article, and then we got a First Circuit appeals decision that's just fascinating. Um, so the headline, but just to set everything up here, basically there are three elite, do they call them exam schools in Boston, and there's an effort, a clear effort to label them as racist, the exams themselves as racist. Um, and I think there's no doubt that the statistics behind it that the are not proportional to the general statistics of the district. So that's going to be, basically here in Milwaukee, it would be as if the exam schools were all 80% white, but in fact, the district is 60% black, something like that. Okay. So, that being a problem in one of Cassellius's biggest things that accomplishments that she talks about is changing these statistics, or this exam to get in. And I'll say this, I know at Rufus King High School here in Milwaukee, which is, rotates among the top tier from time to time, early thousands, late 90s, I can't remember, they put in a requirement of a one-page essay, and the enrollment applications dropped by 50%. So, you know, these are real barriers. But yeah, and I've also say apparently these three high schools are so elite that there's a huge competition to get into that. Okay, so let's take it away. All right, all right. So this looks like it's NBC News. A golden ticket efforts to diversify Boston's elite high schools spur hope and outrage. Exam schools loom large as symbols of opportunity and inequality in America's public schools now. The nation's twin crises are shaken to their core. All right, keep exams. No lottery schools. Save Boston exam schools. Wow. One thing of note here is there. See, I did not know, but maybe I should have, that there seems to be a fairly large Asian population in Boston. Good for everybody. All right, protesters call for Boston to keep admissions exam for elite public schools, including Boston Latin School. This is really funny. There's Boston Latin School, Boston Latin Academy, and then something else. Oh yeah, like Father O'Brien School. You're like, dude, come on. Uh, all right. Oh, sorry. It says Melissa Bailey. This article about exam schools was produced by the Hetchinger Report, a nonprofit independent news service focused on inequality and innovation. And then you look here, and then here is the article, and it seems that it was a nonprofit school, but NBC News or nonprofit. I won't say news, but it's a press release by a nonprofit that is turned into an article by NBC, which I guess they sort of cover it, but not really. So the pictures are better at the NBC one, but we'll take it. The point I think being speaking is, you know, it's not nonpartisan. It's certainly there's a slant here. So Emily Chan is in the sixth grade, a crucial year to get into one of Boston's three exam schools, which serves grades 7 to 12. In the past, the pressure of the entrance test has been intense, and Emily wasn't planning to apply. An exam just again here means that there are some requirements to get in, but apparently these are rigorous ones. For the first time in nearly 60 years, students won't have to sweat through an exam to land a spot. Instead, Emily was invited to apply based on her pre-pandemic academic record, so she threw her name in for all three schools. Emily, 12, lives in Boston's South End with her parents, a homemaker, and a cafeteria worker, both immigrants from China. Her mother, Meifeng Jiang, said that she hopes a golden ticket to one of the city's top ranked schools will set Emily on a path to become a doctor. I just want her to succeed. Whoa, to have more opportunities, Jiang said through a Cantonese translator. I'm just trying to remember. I mean, this is something that happens all over America, is partially as a result of the immigration policies that have been in effect for at least since the end of World War II. Um, that certain areas attract and have certain immigrant populations. And I'm just trying to think of like the last time. Yeah, we do not have a large Chinese population. I would say we have some Hmong, significant but not substantial. But certainly, I just can't even think the last time that I heard of somebody needing a Cantonese translator, even as opposed to Mandarin or something. I mean, that's not something that we deal with here on a daily basis. Emily, who loves math and wants to be a pharmacist, says that she was nervous about how hard the classes may be, but that she's eager for better education. The 1 year change in admissions policy was prompted by the pandemic. Some argue that whether or not that's true. And I guess the argument is basically this, that there was a plan to do this all along, because I've got, we can look over here at the, where is this? The NAACP is saying in 2019 that they need to do this. And then because of the pandemic, they're doing something that they said ahead of time that they need to do. Do you see what I'm saying? So some might say that that was not that's a fig leaf, and a desire to diversify the selective schools. I think that that's the real fact, in which Black and Latino students were underrepresented. For the first time, the city plans to use zip codes to place students along with their GPAs, with priority given to low income areas. And I guess, again, as often happens here, we're not taking a stance necessarily on whether or not it's proper to have uh, more or less Black or Latinos in these exam schools, or the way that they select for those people, or if indeed this is the best method to solve that problem. I think the larger point that we make, as always, is that if you need to obfuscate, then there's a problem. The move is spurring hope among school desegregation advocates who want the exam schools to look more like Boston public schools overall. But the temporary change has also been met with outrage. I think that's fair to say, and at least in some significant litigation. Some say eliminating the test could destroy the very backbone and utility of exam schools. In Boston, protests have erupted over whether, passive voice alert, whether the new administration's admissions process is fair, especially to white and Asian students in the neighborhoods that stand to lose seats in the school. The South End, where Emily lives, is projected to lose several seats. Okay, just to highlight here, old system, exam, new system, quota by neighborhood. A group of parents sued last month to stop the change. A trial kicked off in federal court this week. And we're going to look at the second appeal decision in that case. COVID is a fake cover story for those who want to kill the exam, said parent activist, a white woman who attended Boston Latin School in the 1980s. The new policy stands to degrade academic standards and exclude students based on race. She argued calling it a backdoor attempt to dismantle the exam school system altogether, which again is the stated reference of the newspaper putting this out. So we need to keep that in mind. 90% of graduates at the city's exam schools, Boston Latin Academy, Boston Latin School, John D. O'Brien School of Mathematics. Come on. Why don't you? I mean, it's like calling a baby Rudiger McMurgatroyd Magnetoscope the Third. I mean, it's John D. O'Brien School of Mathematics and Science. I hope they at least call it something pronounceable. 90% compared with 55% in the rest of the district. That's, I'm guessing, high. Not the 95%, but the 55. That's, dang, Boston, that's pretty good. According to state data from 2019, Black and Hispanic students make up only 21% of students at Boston Latin School, the city's top ranked school, but 72% of the district. They are 48% of the students at Boston. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, got it. Whoa, whoa. Black and Latinos make up 72% of the district. I I know very little about Boston, but I will say I'm guessing, and I because I've kind of seen it, that the actual limits of the city of Boston are rather. We're talking. This is inner city, and there's much like Milwaukee. It's the suburbs when you're thinking of Boston, um, and that's many school districts presented with this sort of problem here, which is we've got a very narrow, we're basically just the city. So we may have of elite areas, we've got downtown and a few other areas. Who knows? They've got their, I'm sure they've got this ocean and people want to live on that. Um, I kind of believe they've got some kind of fancy universities and other things. There's going to be elites in the town, and you've got a situation where it's 75% non-elites, just for example. How do you solve that problem? Because you've got basically two options. You can put everybody together, in which case the elites will not have it, will probably leave. And Milwaukee has the same issue. I'm sure every city has the same issue, and they do very similar things. uh, put everybody together, in which case the elites will simply go to private schools. Which, maybe that's the thing for them to do. I don't know. Or, um, I mean, the big drawback I would say is beyond anything else is the school system becomes one exclusively catering to, um, low income people. Or the other alternative, I guess, and what seems to be here is you have this exam, some kind of bear gatekeeping service that then allows there to be these segregated schools. And if we let people in, we're only letting them in who aren't, who aren't elites. We're only letting them in because we think they're extremely smart. So that I think the key question to look at, and there's an assumption that I'm going to challenge before I go too much further on that subject, which is this. I'm going to challenge straight off the bat, um two things. One is that this test is the testing scheme, however it is going to adequately address who's the smartest, who's the not, who's the most able, who's the most likely to succeed, whatever they claim. I categorically reject that some kind of standardized test uh, is going to work for that. Okay. And I also think that, it's very susceptible to the um, argument that it's racist for this. And this is what the argument is here, right? Because there is 75% non-whites in this district, then uh, and because we assume that all the races are equally intelligent, that therefore we would assume if the test wasn't racist, an artificial gatekeeper, we would assume that's the population inside the school would reflect the population outside the school. And we've talked about that several times here in terms of prisons, for example, that we would, statistics being the same in terms of criminality and everything else, right? We can assume that the criminal justice system is racist if we believe these things. Okay, again, we're arguing one way or the other and looking at them here, but we can assume then that that's the case. Now, obviously, there are going to be other factors, and we've talked about that with regard to prison, but there's obviously going to be factors in terms of investment, in terms of culture, in terms of access of opportunity, in terms of the jobs, in terms of economics, in terms of all sorts of cultural and economic issues, which is another way of saying, I guess, and I want to be both careful but clear on what I'm saying about this, that minorities aren't necessarily poor because they're minorities, but the fact that minorities are poor reinforces their position as being poor. I think that that part is fair to say. Yeah. Okay. So, just keeping that in mind, I think that's the big framing here of where I would go in terms of um, how are we able to explain, and because many principals will say the main, or I know this to be true. For example, in the the number one criteria that determines whether or not you're in sort of an elite school in Milwaukee Public Schools has to do with how invested the parents are in advocating for their kid. Okay. Now, some people don't have the ability to be invested in advocating for their kids. Some people don't want to, and all sorts of things in between. Okay. So there's a lot of, we can't, this is the problem with all of these things, is it's not really possible to put in clear guidelines. Okay. But I think what the story of um, the child here who had good grades but basically didn't have the bandwidth to, or really think that she was able to go to this school, then is encouraged to go because she had good grades. Okay. I'm also just sort of wondering what about COVID would make it more difficult to give a test as opposed to less difficult, but okay. That disparity in access to high quality elite education is deeply concerning, said an executive director for Lawyers for Civil Rights in Boston. But good for them. I'm glad for the lawyers being on it. I had some of this. Yeah, the Lawyers for Civil Rights. All right. I can click here. While exam schools are a small subset of American schools, they loom large symbolically, both as free tickets to success in college and career, and as elite institutions that can widen social inequalities in some of the country's neediest districts. And that's, I mean, we have our own version of that, and it changes from time to time. But in my day, Rufus King was the select high school, and it was not uncommon to go to an Ivy League school from Rufus King, but otherwise not at all. They are the most prominent part of a wider group of selected public and middle high schools, which base admission on factors like grades, attendance, and state test scores, in which poor, Black, and Latino students are typically underrepresented. In many cities, such as schools such schools are the pinnacle of academic tracking systems that sometimes begin sorting children by age 4. Okay, and this is a picture of, I believe, pro uh, exam demonstrators. Huh. I'm just so this is interesting because these. this group is not from Boston, even though they're Asian Americans. This is from New York. So I'm just sort of wondering what that angle is. Now, as districts grapple with the first way to handle selective school admissions during the pandemic, when students' lives have been upended and many other in-person tests are being canceled for fear of transmission, the debate over what to do about exam schools has become even louder and more urgent. So is that the case or something else? I mean, I know this is when right here we are in Joe Biden territory here. I think that is fair to say. March of 2021. Yeah. This is when it was just starting. Okay. Yeah, that's when we were just starting too, because this is like January 21st of 2021. In many ways is when this channel got started. Decision to change decades-old admission practices come to a nationwide racial reckoning over the systemic oppression of Black Americans. They raise questions about what public schools are for, sorting students, giving everyone an equal opportunity, or somehow both. Debates about the schools also highlight the conflict for school leaders over how to support higher achieving students without creating a two-tiered system that perpetuates racial oppression. I'm trying to, what are the debates about schools also highlight the conflict for school leaders, including Cassellius, over how to support higher achieving students. Okay, I get that now. I think I got that. So um, and that's the age old gifted concept, which is to segregate or to I guess combine or separate. um I don't know why I couldn't think of an alternative to that, but here that's the again, gifted education, elite education. Is it better to put all the gifted students together? Is it better to put all of the special education students together in whatever form, and like that? Or is it better to have everybody together so that everybody learns from each other and like that? In San Francisco, Lowell High School is going through perhaps the most dramatic change, replacing merit-based screens with a lottery after racist incidents contributed to calls to diversify the school. Huh, I'm gonna see if that's well, yeah, we're going down that rabbit hole. NBC News again, shocker. Um, Wow, this is Lowell High School, February 2021. Everything's the same, just the different names. Uh, only school district, 9 to 12 campuses, formative grades and standardized tests for admissions. Proposals call for random lottery. 18 are white, percent are white, 11% are Hispanic, 1% are black, and 50% are Asian, largely Chinese. Wow, that is a different world. Okay, that compares to the district's total enrollment of 15% white, 30% Hispanic, 6% black, and 33% Asian. So whose lunch is getting eaten there? Hispanics and blacks. We talked about that at Reagan High School here in Milwaukee with whites, and we saw. Okay, that's the Reagan High School, I believe, is the local equivalent of that. Okay. Same. All right, here was the key point. Lowell already went to a random lottery for 21-22 admissions and what had been billed as a temporary measure, citing COVID-19 restrictions that prevented all the necessary student data to be collected. Same Boston to San Francisco. Um, wow. That's like they're talking to each other. And that one also, they so on top of COVID, there also was racist incidents too. That's what got us all in that in the first place. Thomas Jefferson High School in Atlanta, Alexandria, Virginia, scrapped its entrance exam, conducting a holistic review of applicants based on their GPAs, essays, and other factors. New York City School District lifted academic admission screen for middle schools, but kept its entrance exam for selective high schools. That's probably a good compromise. In Boston, the new process will award the first 20% of exam schools seats to top performing students citywide based on GPAs. The remaining seats will be divided up by zip code, with lower income zip codes getting highest priority. To get into the applicant pool, students had to earn at least a B average in English and math, or have scored at grade level in those subjects at state tests before the pandemic hit. So that's what they mean when they say based on grades. That's extremely misleading. Holy cow. I mean, I don't know much about, but that doesn't seem to be a very high um, standard based on grades at all. So when I said earlier, we don't know if that person got good grades. We know they got at least a B or or met at grade level acceptable on a state test. Wow. All right. As students await school placement in April, it's unclear whether more black or Latino students will enroll in the short term, and whether change can withstand legal challenges and last beyond the pandemic. A group called the Boston Parents Coalition for Academic Excellence is suing Boston Public Schools in U.S. District Court. That's what we're going to read, arguing that the new exam schools policy violates students' constitutional rights by using their zip codes as proxy for race and ethnicity. And if we were to do that in Milwaukee, it would 100% be a proxy for race. For zip codes is a proxy for race. You can tell by somebody's zip code what their race and economic status is entirely. This process will artificially favor Latino and African American students to the detriment of Asian and white students, the suit reads. The suit asks for a federal judge to halt the admission process and instead order the schools to admit students based on the GPA alone. All right, as parents, we want our children to have a fair opportunity to earn admission to the exam schools and to enjoy the unsurpassed educational opportunities these schools offer. I have to say, this is with parents, it really is hard to act on a systemic level. I think you always are going to put your own child's needs first, because that's what you're supposed to do. All right, we are going to just read this final thing here, and then we'll wrap up this section. Holy cow. Espinosa Madrigal of Lawyers for Civil Rights, which is representing the interveners, said this is basically the um, students who are saying we have got interest in the suit here, the non-white or Asian students, and a tremendous sense of urgency for us to help Black and Latino students gain access to high quality education, especially during the pandemic when many families face food and housing insecurities. We see the exam schools as a viable platform for these families to escape poverty. Jose Valenzuela, who is Latino, enrolled in Boston's Latin School in 1997, the final year a racial quota was used in admissions before it was overturned in court. He said he has been saddened to see the numbers of Black and Latino students dwindle since then. He said he agrees that Boston zip codes can be a proxy for race because Boston is so segregated, but they're a useful and legal tool to diversify enrollment, he said. We have far too many kids in the city who just need an opportunity like I did to go to a school that pushes them, who teaches history at Boston Legal Academy, Latin Academy. All right. Huh. All right, I guess we'll read it. This is the opinion of a 17-year-old Mr. James Kaimani James, a black senior at Boston Legal Academy and a former student member of Boston School Committee, said he opposes entrance exams because black and Latino students don't have the same resources as other students to prepare for, take, and to succeed at the test. He said he'd rather abolish the exam schools and equitably fund all public schools. But he says that he supports the new zip code based admissions policy, calling it the best route to diversify our exam schools. He said the lawsuit made him angry. We have white and Asian parents going to court saying my child is being discriminated because black and Latino students are finally given a chance to succeed? Question mark, he said. That's sad. Huh. All right. Well, that is going to wrap it up for this. There's clearly a lot more here. Oh, sorry. We read this we have seen this Espinoza Madrigal letter here, and let's see what Cassellius's response to it. This is the lawyer group sent a letter to the district in 19 alleging racial discrimination in exam school admissions. Early last year, the district decided to scrap the ISEE test. Superintendent Brenda Cassellius said the exam was unfair because it tested material that wasn't taught in Boston public schools and thus required outside preparation. The district opted to switch to a new entrance exam, the Measure of Academic Progress, or MAP. But then the pandemic hit, Cassellius said in an interview in February. A district task force recommended suspending the entrance exam for 1 year and using GPA and zip codes instead. Cassellius said, I'm getting a passive voice alert on this one. A district task force. That means I did. Instead, Cassellius said, the new process aims for geographic representation and fairness. It was our best step forward given the constraint of the pandemic, she said. The recommendation drew parents into the streets in dueling protests last fall. Wow. Huh. All right. Well, there's a lot more here, but I think that's where we're going to end it for now. So that's what I've got on that. I think it's a good instruction on what we can expect from Brenda Cassellius based on her past performance indicates future something or others, right? Thanks for sticking with us. We'll keep you informed.